Hello, Seekers. I sense you have a question for me. But before you can ask, I require of you a task. Within my temple are 4 jars, each one sealed behind a test. Bring them to me and I will answer your question without a jest.
Hello, and welcome to Tuna's Tales. This time on Pondering Monsters, we'll be covering mummies. This undead creature is CR3 and seems the perfect option to get our players wrapped up in a new storyline. So let's sally forth and start to explore this encounter. Starting off, I'm pulling in some lore about this mummy. The first thing being that they're typically lawful evil. This isn't going to play a huge part just yet, but the mummy is going to act like it's not evil so that we can pull off a little twist later. Basically, at the end of the day, the party shouldn't seriously suspect that the mummy is evil. If anyone calls out that they usually are in character, then you can go right on ahead and tell them that that's metagaming. The second thing, though, comes from their lore, specifically the part where it states, some serve as undead repositories of lost lore and can be consulted by the descendants of those who created them, minus the descendants part. This one's key to this encounter because the encounter is that the party has been sent to ask the mummy a question by either the local lord, the king of the lands, or a powerful wizard.
Rumors have been circulating for a little while about an ancient being entombed in the lands nearby. Scholars are saying that this being is millennia old and that it can answer any question asked of it. And that's where you all come in. I want you to go and find this being, ask it a question for me, and bring me the answer.
Keeping all that in mind, the quest giver has heard rumors that there is a knowledgeable being who has been entombed somewhere in the lands. The rumors say that it knows a great deal of ancient lost history or lore, and the quest giver wants to ask it a question. The party is tasked with setting out to this tomb to ask said question and return with the answer. However, upon reaching the mummy, they will be told some conditions of asking it a question. In order to get an answer, the mummy has some tests for them to complete. At the end of each test is a canopic jar, which holds the mummy's organs. If the party returns all 4 jars to the mummy, then it'll answer their question. The twist with this, though, is that the mummy, in a proper show of lawful evil, has used the party to gather the jars so that it can break the seal, weakening it, and reawaken as the mummy lord it truly is. It'll still answer the question truthfully, but after receiving the jars, it'll complete a ritual that frees the mummy before it disappears. The main challenge here lies in the tests that the party will need to complete, and I'll be covering some ideas around that shortly here. Before that, though, let's see what questions will curse all who dare to run this encounter. Alright, this one has a fair few questions that we should have answered before trying to run it. These are, what use is this encounter? What question needs to be asked of the mummy? What does travel to the tomb look like? What happened to the mummy after collecting the jars? Why hasn't the quest giver already sent someone to ask their question? And what are the tests? The most interesting one to me is the one about the tests, as that's going to make up the meat of this encounter. Because of that, I'm saving it for last, but the others aren't about to answer themselves either, so let's get going on that. What use is this encounter? We've answered this type of question before, and similar to the last time, I'm going to say a starting point. If you want to kick off an adventure, then this encounter can do just that. Start it off with saying that everyone has been handpicked by the king of the lands, or maybe they all responded to a job posting by the local lord. What if they all met a weird wizard in a tavern? Unlike the last time we asked this question, though, there's a little bit more to this. See, if we take the all-knowing mummy and say that by completing the tests, the party gives it what it needs to become a mummy lord, then you will also have a good potential villain that the party can work towards defeating at around level 10. What question needs to be asked? This one has a lot of possible answers, and only you will know which one is the right one for your game. That being said, some examples that you can use, or that hopefully get the ideas moving for you, are things like, there's an external threat to the lands, and the local lord wants the location of an ancient weapon that can turn things in their favor. If the kingdom's at war, then maybe the king is looking for a way to end the war, or a secret passage into the enemy lands for a surprise attack. If we're talking about a wizard as the quest giver, then maybe they need to know the location of an extremely hard-to-find spell component or lost lore for a powerful spell or ritual that they're trying to complete. With a little refining, any of those ideas would be a perfect thing that someone would want to ask an all-knowing mummy. This is also a good chance to foster some world building if that's your thing, so let your imagination run wild with this and have some fun. As for the answer to the question that's asked, I'll leave that up to you to pick the most interesting thing for your games. What does travel to the tomb look like? We've answered this type of question before as well. You could make it just a few days away from the quest giver, or all the way on a different continent if you wanted to. You can have this whole idea be the first arc to a campaign, where the party starts at level 1 or 2, and then they find the tomb at around level 5. Alternatively, it could be a one-shot, and travel could be a minor aspect of it. So, as usual, do what you think is the most fun. What happens to the mummy after collecting the jars? As I touched on a few times earlier already, upon being delivered the 4 jars, the mummy will be able to return to its full power as a mummy lord. Upon doing so, the now CR-15 creature will teleport away, because it can, and because it needs to start terrorizing the lands. It was mentioned in question 1, but I'll say it again. This is a great opportunity to introduce a mid-campaign boss for your party. The characters just freed it from its prison, and now they have to go and make things right. A classic storyline. From here, the party travels the lands, tracking this creature, fixing the evils that it's doing, and eventually facing it at around level 10 or higher. Why hasn't the quest giver already sent someone to ask their question? This is an easy one in my opinion. You can just say that the tomb was recently discovered or that other people have been sent, but none have returned yet. Add a little flair of mystery and danger to the job, and let your players scare themselves with what they think they might find. Finally, what are the tests? This is the most important question, as without an answer, we're not going to be able to put anything in front of the party. However, this doesn't need to be a difficult question, as we can look to our mummy for inspiration. See, canopic jars traditionally held organs, the lungs, stomach, liver, and intestines specifically, so it makes sense that the mummy wants those back. If we make tests related to the organs, then things should be pretty simple from there. However, liver and intestines don't inspire me much when it comes to thinking up challenges, and since it's a fantasy world, I'm just going to change what the organs are. The aforementioned internals are now going to be the brain and the heart because those are easier to work with. Using the brain, heart, lungs, and stomach, we can now come up with some tests. The brain makes sense to be some sort of puzzle or riddle. You can create your own here or use any number of things that you can find online. Bonus points if you make the answer the brain in some fashion. When they solve it, they can collect the jar. For the heart, we can use a test of courage or faith, like someone needs to selflessly protect or sacrifice themselves to save the others. The key here being that everyone needs to believe that someone is sacrificing themselves. The character is totally fine after they pass the test, but the others won't know that just yet. For the lungs, we can send the party to go swimming. They'll have no trouble getting to the bottom of whatever deep pool there is, but what about the swim back up? For this one, we can say that upon picking up the jar, some creatures get released to hunt them down and put the jar back in the rightful place. Maybe a group of sharks. If only there was a video detailing an encounter about that. Moving on though, the last jar they need is the stomach, and I immediately think drinking or eating contest. If you want to inject some silliness into the session, then make it an undead drinking contest with a zombie, a skeleton, or even the mummy. From here, it's a one-on-one event, and the winner gets to claim the jar. The party can, of course, try multiple times with this one, as long as someone new tries each time. And that's the 4 tests. As you may have noticed, they aren't complete in the slightest. I just included them to give you an idea of a direction that you could go with it. In fact, I encourage you to come up with something better. That helps make this your encounter, rather than one you picked up from some guy online. With all those out of the way, though, we can start looking at tying this all together. Tying this all together is pretty straightforward at this point. Starting from the party arriving at the tomb, they can start to make their way in. You could easily include some puzzles, traps, treacherous terrain, or smaller combats to soften the party up before they even attempt any tests. Once inside the main burial chamber, they can roleplay a little with the mummy inside, learn about the tests, and then start to attempt them in any order they feel like. The mummy will inform them that they need to place the jars on an altar in front of it, and upon doing so, the party may ask their question.
You have done well, Seekers. You may ask me your question, and I shall answer.
It'll answer truthfully, some ritual magic happens, and it becomes a mummy lord. At this point, the mummy lord should thank the party for freeing it and state that now it can go take its revenge before disappearing.
Your question is answered, and the ritual is complete. As thanks for freeing me, I shall let you live to spread the word of my return, while I find the descendants of those that imprisoned me, and take my just revenge upon them. Farewell, intrepid seekers.
From there, the party should be a little concerned at the very least, and the next time they return to the nearest small village that they may have passed through on their way here, they can find that all the people have been turned into undead, taken hostage, or are in the process of being taken hostage. Other than that, though, that's the whole encounter. Go find a tomb, ask the mummy inside a question, complete tests to get your answer, and free an undead evil setting loose to wreak havoc upon the land. You know, just your average Tuesday night. Overall, this is a fairly easy encounter, depending on how much you throw at your party before the tests. If they go into the tests fresh, then you should aim for a 5th level party of 5 to have a decent time with them. What I mean by this is they should be wanting a long rest before heading back home. If you have a higher level party, though, you can make things harder by having more consequences during the tests. For the brain test, you could have some continuous damage caused by environmental effects or respawning enemies that keep coming around until the puzzle is solved. The heart test could be more deadly. Instead of just believing that someone sacrificed themselves, you could say that they're actually in danger if the party doesn't move fast enough after passing the test. The lungs test could use tougher creatures underwater, or even just say that the water is anti-magic water for spells of a certain level and lower, so that they can't get past the challenge so easily. This is another one of those encounters where there isn't much combat expected, so scaling things becomes an exercise in making the non-combat challenges harder. This can be tricky to do, but is also a little tough to advise on because so much depends on what your party can do and how well you know your party. So, before running this, take some time to think about how your players may approach these tests. Doing so will hopefully give you some ideas on how to scale them. With that though, you should be well on your way to unleash the mummy's curse upon your players' characters. I like this encounter because of how you can branch things off with it. If you're looking for something that takes a couple sessions, a possible one-shot, or something longer that can make up a chunk of a campaign, then this is a decent place to start. For this encounter, my current and future patrons can find a PDF where I detail out the mummy's tomb, which includes some completed example tests and tips for how to run them. If you're interested in that, feel free to head on over with the link in the description and join my Patreon so that you can get the Trials of the Mummy's Tomb to use in your games. Otherwise, if you enjoyed this video, then leave a like, consider subscribing and doing that thing with the bell so that you can get notified of the next encounter that I come up with. And if you have any questions about this encounter or just want to suggest a monster for me to cover in the future, then leave it in the comments below. With that, thanks for letting me talk at you all, and until next time,
Keep pondering.